Valid points. The fate of Ethereum miners when there's nothing left to mine. What happens to all of the miners on Ethereum when Ethereum switches from proof of work to proof of stake? And will this switch cause Ethereum to become the dominant store of value? Perhaps a pun there on proof of stake and proof of work. Goldman Sachs and others are backing the Bitcoin competitor. Let's go first to Carter from Bitsby Tripping. What are your thoughts on the coming switch of Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake? Will this make all of the current people who currently mine Ethereum, will this put them out of business?
Yeah. No. Spoiler alert. No, I don't think so. So I've done some pretty deep analysis on this. I'm actually in that article, I think, at the bottom of that article, that first one. With Christina Kim reached out from CoinDesk to ask for some points on that. And what I effectively covered in there is there's, I've done quite a bit of research on it, made that public. I have a huge spreadsheet to show various price discoveries that would need to happen to make up that, delta. When you look at the Ethereum network, it's two sectors. There's the ASICs, which are Ethash, and then there's the GPU side. The GPU side right now, based on what's been shut down, we've seen Ethereum peak at about 650 terahash, and it's sitting around 490 terahash right now. And remember, at 650 terahash, even though it was $4,300 ETH price, there was if you take 650 terahash and look at $2,500 ETH price or 2,200, it's still profitable. So there was nothing that should have stopped the growth of it continuing past 650. At about 750 at $2,500, it would become unprofitable, even at 2.5 ETH per block pricing. So what that shows is a lot of the stuff that's gotten shut down in China was about 220 terahash, and most of that being mainly ASICs. So that gives you the kind of scale and scope of what that was, is about 35%, 36%. I think for a long time we were saying it was closer to probably 40%. Obviously those ASICs have proliferated not just in China, so there's still Ethereum ASICs out there. So when Ethereum moves, why it's relevant, the whole point of me saying that is it gives you a dynamic of where the GPU hash rate is going to go. So if we look at 150 to 200 terahash being GPU, that's really the size of pie that's going to spread across the other networks. So it comes down to what are those other networks? Well, Ethereum Classic and Ravencoin are the two largest networks that can take on that hash rate, at least at 200 terahash hash rate. It would make it unprofitable unless Ethereum Classic moves back up over $125 per coin. Right now it's sitting at about 35 to 40. When it hit 175, it actually had enough to almost take on most of that 200 terahash. And it's literally a simple math problem. If you look at Ethereum Classic at $175, look at Ethereum 2 years ago at $86, right? When it was $86, it was putting out right there at 3 coin. They went from the 3 coin to 2 coin hard fork. And when right around the same time that the price went down at $86 and people had to shut down and the network went down to about 160 terahash. So Ethereum Classic right now is showing you that it already can take on more than half of the Ethereum GPU network right now, sitting at like $40, $50. So then that means the rest of the half needs to come over to some other network or be spread across the other different coins out there. And I've done a pretty deep analysis on that. I took the top like 25 hash rate, proof of work networks out there. So that's Ergo, that's a whole bunch of VTC, Vertcoin, all these different networks. And I looked at it proportionally, how much hash rate needed to come over to them and what was their price that it needed to get to. If, something like Ravencoin went to 51 cents, it could take on the entire Ethereum network of hash rate. If it sits at 25 cents, which it hit 27 cents in May, it could take on that other half that's required. So bottom line, to sum all that up, is the two largest networks right now at their current price points are pretty close to be able to take on a majority of that hash rate as it sits. Now, what the question is, what happens with that other 200 to 300 terahash of ASICs? That's going to be the pivot point of what network is going to fork back to Ethash. So you have Ubik, you have ETC with their ETC cache. Are one of them going to fork back because they have the highest potential to gain all that ASIC hash power? That's where you have Lindsay and was it Lindsay Tech, which is Silicon, lobbying right now. You see that they actually have in this article that they're lobbying some of these other networks, Ethereum Cooperative, but ETC Cooperative rather, and a few other networks to try to lobby for them to go back to Ethash. So then there's a place for those ASICs because there's a huge amount of investment in that. So it all comes back down to consensus. People are like, oh, that's like some kind of gaming. It's consensus at the end of the day. You want to have your best option, your best amount of hash rate. So it really comes down to who's going to take back over to Ethash, and then who's going to take all the GPUs. So it's not going anywhere.
How exciting for Ethereum Classic to come back again. Just the original sin comes back to haunt them. The fork forever. Dan, Eve, your thoughts on Ethereum and the possible upcoming switch to proof of stake?
Technically, that surely F Classic's not the original sin though, because that wasn't the chain that was like rolled back, right? Wow, wow, wow.
And the saves with the other chain, yes.
So I think so there'll be more shitcoins invented that are mineable, right? That there may even be like some collection of miners, GPU miners who've got a big farm that kicks something off just to kind of compete with F Classic and Raven, and to bring a new GPU mining coin out there. That's definitely a possibility. It does seem like I don't know whether AMD will follow suit, but like Nvidia, they're blocking or limiting the mining now on the 3060 Ti, 3070, and 3080. So if AMD start doing that, that would be interesting for the playing field. But what does make me laugh is that going back on the Shiba coin, they launched their Uniswap clone the other day, and it started getting used, and everyone on Ethereum started kicking off because the chain was being used and it was slowing down again and putting transaction fees up. And it just seems like Ethereum's like the only chain where everyone starts to use it and people get pissed off, whereas every other chain they're like, yeah, please use our, we need to show that it's being used, definitely. But the flippening, no, I don't think so. I mean, the DeFi craze has had an incredible meteoric rise, but I just think once you get DeFi properly on Bitcoin, then it show's over.
Ben, ARK.
Support BIP 300 drive chains, so then you can have all this DeFi on Bitcoin, all this shitcoin. You can just go to Bitcoin, and it renders all this stuff completely redundant because it's no longer a house built on sand. The ETH2 switch, I looked at their proposal for the transition, and it looked scary. It made my stomach churn when I was looking at the proposal for it. I mean, if it works, whatever, you end up with a proof of stake coin. Proof of stake to me just feels like the same sort of neoliberal control we've always had. That the people with the bags control the money. So very, very exciting. So sadly, proof of work is the best solution. So I say sadly, obviously, because of its huge carbon footprint. And there isn't a better solution currently. So we just have to mine Bitcoin more efficiently. But yeah, I mean, it's a big experiment, the transition to ETH2, and all these miners are going to go somewhere. And I do think there will be another renaissance of the ETH Classic. But maybe if the transition to ETH2 goes well, then people get all excited and start pumping into that. But they've just got this crazy amount of front end devs, which Bitcoin should have. But these people want to innovate. I think I said this in the last one, is the last Bitcoin group, that Vitalik, he was a Bitcoiner, but he was impatient. He wanted the promise of smart contracts and everything they can do, but he wanted it now. He didn't want to wait until it came onto Bitcoin, and it was developed in a slow, sober way. He wanted it now. He wanted to be reckless. He wanted it now. and that's where Ethereum came from, and lots of people did. And it's the same with, Zcash. They want certain functionality and they want it now, and they can't wait for it on Bitcoin. But as Dan said, like, it will all come onto Bitcoin. It's just a matter of time. The proposals are there, but Bitcoin develops slowly because it's very conservative in its development, because obviously it's got this money at stake, whereas some of these other chains don't. But yeah, in the short term, I don't know, maybe Ethereum could flip Bitcoin, but it doesn't matter, because the Bitcoin is Bitcoin's the network. The rest of them, they're kind of experiments and glimpses into a possible future that will exist on Bitcoin. It's just a matter of time until we get it. And if you're really keen on all this functionality, which Bitcoin hasn't got at the moment, then support Drive chains, BIP 300.
Just to build a little bit on what Ben said, a lot of the differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum come down to centralization versus decentralization. Centralization is a lot easier. It's a lot faster. It's a lot more controllable. Decentralization is a lot harder. It's a lot slower, but it's a lot harder to control. And from the beginning, Ethereum has made many choices that have led it towards centralization. The early pre-mine given to their developers and their supporters, leading to a lot of people centralized holding the coin. The production restriction that they did, favoring the people who would hold on to their early pre-mine, and now the switch from proof of work to proof of stake, literally favoring the people who have the largest proof of stake, the people who have the early pre-mine. The potential for centralization in a proof of stake system has often been discussed as one of the problems. It seems as if proof of stake itself academically leads towards centralization and elite control, which are radically different ideas than Bitcoin. That's why the Ethereum Bitcoin thing's always been such a back and forth. Everyone wants to say, oh, they're all cryptocurrencies. They're interchangeable like Kleenex or Band-Aids. But each one is uniquely for a different problem. Ethereum solves this problem of having smart contracts. Bitcoin solves the problem of internet money. So it's very different problems, but because they're in the same category, because they're all cryptocurrencies, they must just be interchangeable like toast.